called the GOP's bluff today. So many clips for us to go through here. Trump's legal immunity argument is not just legally stupid, it's also a potential dagger for him politically. This is what you should be talking to your friends and relatives about because it's frightening and it ought to be disqualifying. We'll debunk some January 6th revisionism, give you some tips on how to spot extremism creeping into sports, and finally, we'll dissect one of the biggest right-wing lies out there on social media and how you can respond to it. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who vote for progress in every election and want to convince their conservative friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
Well, okay, Jason, it seems like there was a pretty busy day here in front of the House Oversight Committee. Hunter Biden made a surprise appearance today, and this was a meeting of the Oversight Committee on whether to hold Hunter in contempt of Congress. And both the Judiciary and Oversight Committees are expected to advance recommendations along a party line vote that Biden be held in contempt because he skipped the closed door interview last month that we talked about. Nancy Mace, the Republican from North Carolina, was pretty pointed. She said, I think he should be hauled off to jail right now. What do you make of all of this? Yeah.
Well, we're going to go through these clips one by one, but I think in setting this up, here's what is important to remember, because when you talk about this with people, because you're going to, and again, if somebody brings up Hunter Biden to you, it's likely that you're not trying to persuade them. You're trying to persuade the other person in your company while you're with them. And what's important to point out here is that the Republicans, many of which have dodged subpoenas from Congress themselves in relation to January 6th and other items, but they've subpoenaed him and they've said he is only subpoenaed to appear in private. Now, they at first, as you're going to see from some of these clips, they at first were like, do you want to come in private or do you want a public hearing? And he said, I'll take the public hearing. And then they're like, we're going to subpoena you in private. And he's like, no. Let's do this in front of everybody. And then he shows up to the very committee that wants to question him. And he's sitting there and they're like, no, we refuse to question you, but we will continue to subpoena you so that we can question you when there are no cameras. And we're going to like have a motion to basically throw you in jail, a contempt motion for showing up for a public hearing and refusing to show up for a private hearing. That's where we're at. And Nancy Mace is just like, she's like, wakes up every day. What do I need to do to keep from getting primaried today is pretty much her operating principle, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, she used to be the one that everybody told me was the moderate. You know, I've had so many people say, you got to have her on the Lost Debate show. You'd be so, it's so refreshing to have this voice.
I worked with her office on a veterans homelessness thing back before she, I don't even want to say drank the Kool-Aid, back before she took on the role of a person who had drank the Kool-Aid.
Right. It's amazing. Where should we start with these clips, Jason? I feel like you've been a connoisseur of these clips today, so I'm gonna take my direction from you.
Let's see. I guess let's just start with Hunter Biden arriving, and I'll try to narrate it for our audio audience.
Everybody to left or right, left or right. Left or right, guys. To the left or right.
You plan on testifying today?
I'm going to ask him some questions, but he is there for the purpose of sitting.
I think you want to.
So he's not going to answer any of these because he's there to sit there and be present while they talk about how he refuses to show up. So we're going to see him. He's going to walk in here.
Involving your dad in your business.
The other
to come answer the committee's questions under oath before the American people. This is
so now he's walking in, and they're all fatting off. He's just sitting. He's in the front row
of Republican members of
with his
Congress,
lawyer,
like Mr. Jordan,
ready to talk. Okay, so I guess let's just go through them. Our wise producers have put them in an order. Do you want to talk about that one first, or should we go to the next one?
So I guess my understanding is this wasn't like prearranged. Nobody knew he was coming, and he just decided on his own to show up.
Yeah, I have to imagine that people like Moskowitz and some of the Democratic members probably were told. I mean, I would think if I were his lawyer, I would have reached out and been like, "Hey, we're going to be there," so that they could tailor their remarks to it. But I don't know that. It's just my guess.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what
okay.
happened in this hearing?
All right. So now we've got a supercut that Salty and I think Jeremy put together. Let's do supercut number one. Let's just see, let's look at Jamie Raskin setting up the contempt of Congress situation with Hunter's testimony, followed by Moskowitz calling for a show of hands on who just wants him to testify now. And then Moskowitz listing all the members of Congress who did not comply with their own subpoenas and putting that in the record. So here's the first part of what happened in the hearing.
The chairman refused to take yes for an answer from Hunter Biden. Instead, on December 1, they pulled a bait and switch. They changed the terms of their request. They rejected his offer or his acceptance of their offer and insisted that he now come in and sit for a secret closed-door deposition. On December 6th, Hunter Biden's lawyer reiterated that Hunter Biden was willing to accept the chair's original request and once again offered to appear on December 13th or any other date in December to answer any question pertinent and relevant to the subject matter. He again raised concerns about closed-door sessions. That's what brings us to today, Mr. Chairman.
And the chairman gave the witness that option, then the only folks that are afraid to hear from the witness with the American people watching are my friends on the other side of the aisle. I don't know if there's a proper motion, Mr. Chairman, but I'll make a motion. Let's vote. Let's take a vote. Who wants to hear from Hunter right now, today? Anyone? Come on. Who wants to hear from Hunter?
Motion's out of order. Yeah.
No one. So I'm a visual learner, and the visual is clear. Nobody over there wants to hear from the witness. Oh, there's one. Thank you.
Will you yield for a question?
I'm not there yet, but I will eventually. So there's no one, well, other than one or two, that want to hear from the witness. So the majority of my colleagues over there, including the chairman, don't want to hear from the witness with the American people watching. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to hear from you. Will you acknowledge that you invited the witness on television to choose whether he could come to a public hearing? And do you stand by your words, or do you renege that invitation to the witness?
To answer the question, I've said repeatedly, after the deposition, Mr. Biden can come in front of a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to play the video, but that is not what you said on television multiple times. We have the quotes. We can put them up. You said the witness can choose between a deposition.
Listen, Mr. Moskowitz, Mr. Biden doesn't make the rules. We make the rules.
No, Mr. Chairman, you make the rules. And the rule you made is that he can choose.
The rule is...
Those were your words. Reclaiming my time. To my colleagues who talk about lawful subpoenas, I appreciate the gentlelady from South Carolina who voted to hold people in contempt. Listen, I'll make this bipartisan. I'll vote for the Hunter contempt today. You can get my vote. But I want you to show the American people that you're serious. Here is the subpoena to Representative Scott Perry, who did not comply. I'd like to enter this into the record. Here is the subpoena to Mark Meadows. I'd like to enter this into the record, who did not comply. Here is the subpoena to Jim Jordan, who did not comply with a lawful subpoena. I'd like to enter that into the record. Here is the subpoena to Mo Brooks, who did not comply. I'd like to enter that into the record. Here is the subpoena to Mr. Biggs, who did not comply. I'd like to enter that into the record. And here's the subpoena to Mr. McCarthy, who did not comply. I'd like to enter that into the record. There's an amendment coming to add some of those names into the contempt order. You vote to add those names and show the American people that we apply the law equally, not just when it's Democrats, right? It's a crime when it's Democrats, but when it's Trump and the Republicans, it's just fine. No, show that you're serious and that everyone is not above the law. Vote for that amendment, and I'll vote for the Hunter Biden contempt. I yield back.
Okay, so next, so that's the beginning, right? And then next, what you have is a series of Republicans making statements at Hunter Biden as if he's there to testify, because we see this in congressional hearings all the time, right? Somebody shows up to testify, and then they get a tongue lashing from Republicans or Democrats. I mean, if it's Wells Fargo, Elizabeth Warren lets you know what she thinks. If it's Hunter Biden, apparently you get to hear from Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene and people like that. But they're not letting him testify. He's sitting in the room and they're saying mean things to him, but they won't let him respond, which is, kind of cowardly. It's totally cowardly. And then you'll see the response by Moskowitz. You'll see Nancy Mace spout off and kind of embarrass herself, I think. And then Moskowitz and Goldman come in after that. So let's do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Comer. First of all, my first question is, who bribed Hunter Biden to be here today? That's my first question. Second question, you are the epitome of white privilege, coming into the Oversight Committee, spitting in our face, ignoring a congressional subpoena to be deposed. What are you afraid of? You have no balls to come up here and—
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry.
Mr. Chairman,
if the gentlelady wants to hear from Hunter Biden, we can hear from him right now, Mr. Chairman. Let's take a vote and hear from Hunter Biden. What are you afraid of?
Hold on. Order.
Are women allowed to speak in here or no? Are women allowed to speak in here or no? Because you keep interrupting me.
I'll interrupt the chairman. I don't know that he's a lady.
I think that that Hunter Biden should be arrested right here, right now, and go straight to jail. Our nation is founded on the rule of law.
Come on.
And the premise that the law applies equally to everyone, no matter what your last—
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
It doesn't matter who you are.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Biggs over here.
Donald Trump Jr.
Biggs over here.
State your point, Mr. Biggs.
Yeah, my point of order is this. Are we going to continue on with this blatant interruption? This is absurd and inappropriate. I intend to give my statement. I don't intend to have anybody interrupted. I'm not going to interrupt your statements. I think you should have decorum and courtesy and don't act like a bunch of nimrods.
You just interrupted a woman.
And that's five,
That this is a game for these folks. Sure, they want to support their guy. They don't care about America. They don't care about what the president's doing to destroy America. They're just locking arms to support their guy.
My friend from Pennsylvania also chastises us for just supporting our guy. And I wonder how he would define supporting our guy. Would he define supporting our guy as trying to instigate a coup at the Department of Justice to install a lackey and remove the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General so that he could keep his guy in office even though he lost? Is that just supporting our guy? Because that's what Mr. Perry did.
Okay, last one. So now we've got Nancy Mace very convincingly reading her statement of outrage. and then you've got
well, the identity politics. I thought we were against identity politics. I'm hearing about her being interrupted because she's a woman. I'm hearing about white privilege. I mean, what's going on here?
Oh, and then you've got her colleague, her Republican colleague, interrupting her to complain about her being interrupted, which is, I think, my favorite part. But now we get to the last part, which is just as Marjorie Taylor Greene is about to speak, Hunter Biden gets up and leaves. Now, he never speaks the whole time. He goes out into the hallway. She's upset that he's leaving. What's happening is he's taking all of the reporters with him so that his lawyer can give a statement to the reporters outside the hearing room, knowing that that's what people are going to, that's the story people will tell later, which is, I think, a very smart move. So let's see that.
Gentlemen, time's expired. Chair recognizes Ms. Green from Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Hunter. Apparently, you're afraid of my words.
Whoa! Oh!
I'd like to reclaim my time, Mr. Chairman.
Burst their bubble. Wow, that's too bad.
So this is another angle of him leaving. So this is the angle where it stays with him, and then we'll see what his lawyer says when he leaves the room.
Why not stay a while?
I have a statement to make to the press. Statement. I will have a statement.
And scene. What do you think?
I mean, Congress is a joke, I have to say.
Totally.
Like, it's really insane. So that's one. Is like, these people are, we've said this for a long time, but the way these people act, like if True acted anywhere near as childish as they are, he'd be punished for a long time. It's just, it's amazing to me that this is just where we are. It's not a profound point. But I do think it was an effective, I think Moskowitz's testimony in particular was very effective. I think like pushing them to and saying, look, I'll vote for Hunter. let's vote for everybody. Let's be consistent. There's obviously no answer to that.
Yeah. The other thing I think that stands out whenever I watch these hearings, and it's to your point about how silly it all is that there was a time when, regardless of party, people just sat based on seniority, and now they sit in there just like they do in the larger chamber, on the left or on the right. They literally enter from different doors. I mean, they just never interact ever. Members of Congress, they don't have to interact with members of the other party. When I was in the state legislature, you just sat where you sat. Now on the floor, you sat, the Democrats sat on one side, the Republicans sat on the other, but you went into hearing rooms and you just sat wherever you were going to sit, and it was all mixed up, and it made for a much more collaborative process. Now, I don't think you're ever going to get that in this hearing room, right, on this committee, but it just stands out to me every time I watch this sort of thing. I think that they think they have a debating high ground here that they don't have. They're clearly going to get through to the people who are eager to hear that Hunter is corrupt and just hear only what they say. But to anybody who's persuadable on this stuff, I do think that the Democrats in the House who are on this committee are doing a good job. And I think in particular, Hunter Biden and his lawyers, particularly his lawyers, are doing a very good job of being like, we're not afraid of you, and we are here to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I think Hunter Biden is an example of somebody who has made a lot of mistakes, but is handling the post-mistake period better than most people who are involved in political scandals. And he's been involved in one at an unfairly high level, considering, I'm not saying any of the things that he is accused of are okay. I'm saying that if he were not the president's son and he were accused of them, we wouldn't know about him. And I think he's handled that very well, in the sense that making the decision to confront them and to go in and say, I'm available, I will talk all you want to talk, I'm just not doing it in secret, and to just keep showing up, I think is very effective. And I think that the theatrics of taking the press with you at some point, and after that confrontation happens, making a statement to the press, I think is very well done by his lawyers.
I do wonder where the Jared Kushner hearings are. Like, the Democrats in the Senate, why don't we have hearings on the $2 billion that Jared Kushner received from the Saudis? And, Kushner was very much in the Trump government, working on the very issues that directly touch on Saudi interests. So I'm just curious, what happened there? What's going on there?
Well, serious question. Do you think they should?
I mean,
it's hard one.
I'm half like political hardball guy and half like high-minded, let's focus on the existential threats to our country type of guy. But one of those existential threats happens to be Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So I do think it's wildly inappropriate what Kushner did. And I think we should make it as hard as possible on people who sell out to foreign interests. It's why, to make it bipartisan, I've been very critical of Menendez and have for a long time, and think he should resign. Right. I think Jared Kushner, his deal with the Saudis raises a ton of questions, and I think he should answer those questions.
So I'm a third. My first third is political hardball. Like, they're doing this, we do it. Same as your first half. My second third, same as your second half, which is, look, what he did is wrong and it should be investigated and you got to hold people accountable. But here's my final third, which is, I think maybe that's what they want. I think that what the other side wants is for the entire election to be about all politicians are corrupt. They want the conclusion of persuadable voters to be Trump is corrupt and Biden is corrupt too, and Democrats are corrupt and Republicans are corrupt. And so what's the point, right? So that those people either settle into a low information, persuadable place where, the other guys at their gym are voting for Trump, so they'll vote for Trump, or they are more typically left-leaning constituency. Maybe they're a working African-American, or like a working family that's African-American or Latino, and they say, you know what, it's all a waste of our time. Let's stay home, right? So that's my question, is like, is that where they want this to go anyway? That they just want the Senate controlled by Democrats to be investigating Republicans, and the House controlled by Republicans to be investigating Democrats, so that as a result, nothing can get done and they can't be blamed for nothing getting done, instead of this election being about the threat of Donald Trump to democracy and the literal threats to rights, like the right to choice and voting and everything else.
You know, the tiebreaker for me is the Saudis. I would want to make life as uncomfortable as possible for them. So if everything's a wash, I'm like, well, at least let's bring some scrutiny to this government that so blatantly is buying off powerful people in our country.
Yeah. When in doubt, you do your job. And as long as you can do your job, if you're in the Senate, if you can do your job of trying to advance, legislation that'll help people and investigate Kushner, then do it. But the truth is, like, he should be investigated by like the DOJ and others. So,
Right.
All right.
Well, let's take a break and hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, I mean, there's a whole lot going on here. We're going to talk about a very bad day in court for Donald Trump. And we're going to take stock of where things are in this election. Iowa is only 5 days away. And then we're going to talk about some January 6th revisionism, and then check in with your favorite quarterback from the New Jersey Jets. All of that and more when we come back. Sleep is so important to me, which is why I love my Helix mattress. And with everything else that's going on, from life to work to, just my friends and family and everything like that, it's incredibly important to get a great night of sleep every night. And I've had this mattress from Helix for over 2 years now, and my sleep quality has been so much better. They offer 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress just made for kids. So take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes, and your personalized mattress is stripped straight to you at your door, free of charge. I took the Sleep Quiz, and I got the Midnight Luxe mattress because I like to sleep on my side, and I like a medium sort of feel mattress. And Helix knows that there's no better way to test out a new mattress than by sleeping on it in your own home. And that's why they offer a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. And they've been awarded the #1 mattress pick by GQ and Wired Magazine. It's even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. They're offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. So go to helixsleep.com/majority and use the code HelixPartner20. So go to helixsleep.com/majority and use the code HelixPartner20. That's HelixPartner20. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. So let's face it, after a night of drinks, I don't bounce back the way I used to. And if you're as old as I am or more, you know what I'm talking about. And sometimes you have to make a choice. Either you have a great night or you have a great next day. And I've been facing that choice until I found ZBiotics. ZBiotics pre-alcohol, probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD students to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break that byproduct down. And just remember, you can make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, and then you could drink responsibly and you could feel your best the next day. It's amazing. I wish they had this when I was in college. So I first gave ZBiotics a try when I was bringing in the new year, and I drank probably a little bit more than I should have. And the next day I felt great. I went out for a surf, and this is how it's going to be, right? This year, I want to form more sustainable and better drinking habits. I know so many of you want to do the same. And you don't have to take the all or nothing approach anymore. ZBiotics will allow you to enjoy nights out in moderation while working towards your goals. So go to zbiotics.com/majority54 to get 15% off your first order when you use majority54 at checkout. That's ZBiotics. And they're backed with 100% money back guarantees. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. So remember to head to zbiotics.com/majority54 and use the code majority54 at checkout for 15% off. And thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and for the good times. All right. Interesting back and forth in court yesterday. So there's this appeal. This is the same immunity question that Jack Smith wanted the Supreme Court to answer quickly. They denied him, but now it's in front of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, which, they impanel a 3-judge panel. This panel is hearing arguments from Trump's lawyers that the president is immune from charges. And it set up some rather interesting back and forths between Trump's attorney and these judges. Let's go to this clip. I think that gets really to the heart of the matter.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
What if he weren't? There would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Chief Justice's opinion in Marbury against Madison and our constitutional tradition and the plain language of the impeachment judgment clause all clearly presuppose that what the founders were concerned about was not.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is
no. My answer is qualified yes.
I mean, wow.
So this is the corner that they've painted themselves into. They, and George Conway made a good point, which is the lawyer is contradicting himself anyway. So he's saying, well, the only mechanism essentially is impeachment, but he's also saying that he wants to shield the president from politically motivated prosecution as well. Impeachment is a political body, right? And there's also like the same logic should apply to impeachment, but this panel, I think what's clear is this panel, I think, is going to swiftly deny the president's requests. And this panel includes a Bush-appointed judge who seems just as skeptical as the rest of the judges. And so then it's going to go to the Supreme Court. There's a question about whether this delays things, but I get the sense that they're going to put something out really fast and it will not be that long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think they know they're going to lose, but Trump has really doubled down on this immunity claim. Like just the same way that he found safe mental harbor in the idea that the election was stolen when it was not, he has found safe mental harbor in the idea that he broke no laws because as president, he is immune from the law. And now he's just saying that. It's not just like something his lawyers are going into court and saying. That has become canon in the Donald Trump universe psychosis series. And now he says it. So let's go to the clip of his reaction, what he said to the press after this hearing.
So they're losing in every poll. They're losing in almost every demographic. Numbers came out today that are really very mind-boggling if you happen to be Joe Biden. And I think they feel this is the way they're going to try and win. And that's not the way it goes. That'll be bedlam in the country. It's a very bad thing. It's a very bad precedent. As we said, it's the opening of a Pandora's box. And it's a very sad thing that's happened with this whole situation. When they talk about threat to democracy, that's your real threat to democracy. And I feel that as a president, you have to have immunity. Very simple. And if you don't, as an example, if this case were lost on immunity, and I did nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. I'm working for the country. And I worked on very hard on voter fraud because we have to have free elections. We have to have strong borders. We have to have free elections. Those two things almost above all. And we found tremendous voter fraud. We have a list of it. We have some findings if you want it. The press doesn't like reporting it, but we found tremendous voter fraud, determinative voter fraud.
So, yeah. So sure. Jack Smith's legal team in their briefings directly addressed this question of what is and is not covered within immunity. And they said, quote, those alleged acts were carried out by and on behalf of the defendant in his capacity as a candidate in the extensive involvement of private attorneys and campaign staff in procuring the fraudulent slates as alleged in the indictment underscores that those activities weren't within the outer perimeter of the office of the presidency. That's what he's saying. So he's saying, look, like especially in the DC case, running for president is not a function of the office of president, right? That's how you get to the presidency. But then there's the whole separate question of, well, you're president, the SEAL Team 6 analogy. If Trump is right, then Biden could assassinate Trump tomorrow. And as long as we got enough Democrats in the Senate who decide to cover Biden's ass, that's fine, according to their legal argument.
That's right. I mean, their argument is he can order hits on people. Like that's that. And it's not just their legal argument. Trump said in that clip, I believe it is important that a president has immunity. That's not a president. That's a dictator, right? So the whole idea of like, is he just playing footsie with the term dictator? Is he being cute with it? No. He's describing a dictator. He's saying that if he's president of the United States and a member of Congress he disagrees with, who is going to have a crucial vote on a matter he cares about, comes into his office and he strangles them and kills them, that is not murder, that is a presidential action. Like, that is not an exaggeration. That is the argument that they are making, and it is now what Donald Trump believes, which brings me to the point that I made in the intro, which is, of all the stupid stuff that they have said, this is the dumbest thing that they have said that they did not want to say originally. If it were not for the fact that he is being prosecuted for doing crimes, Donald Trump doesn't come out on the campaign trail and just make a big show of saying presidents should be immune and above the law, because it's not a popular thing to say. It might be popular with like the MAGA base, but it's not going to play well in the general election.
Yeah, and let's face it, they don't mean it. They don't mean it in the general sense. They mean that their president.
This guy,
only their presidents.
Yeah, like, because he's at the same time out there saying that as soon as he takes office, he's going to prosecute Joe Biden for allowing a special counsel to investigate and prosecute him, which would imply that he doesn't believe that Joe Biden is immune, right, from breaking the law, even though that doesn't describe someone breaking the law. But whatever, it doesn't work. So to me, once I still believe that the most important arguments to make are policy arguments, and they're about democracy, and they're about rights, and they're about extremism. But to the extent that you are debating the two people in this presidential election, and which the character of the two and what it'll mean for the country, I think it is incredibly important to go ahead and point out that there is only one person who thinks that the president can do whatever they want, and that they can murder people if they want, that they can take away rights from anybody they want. I think that is a powerful argument, and it is one that Trump has given to us.
Well, let's take a look at the timeline of cases that Trump's facing right now. And this is just a few of the cases, to be clear. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. If you've got that at your disposal. There it is. All right, so let's take these one at a time. So the Georgia election interference case, he was indicted on August 14th, and the proposed trial is August 5th. Now, the DA in that case, I don't know if you saw this, Jason, she's in the middle of something unrelated that MAGA is piling on. There's some kind of divorce case involving a lawyer in her office in which she is being called to testify in. I think the speculation is that there's some allegation that she had some kind of improper relationship or whatever. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, obviously. That will be something that the MAGA crowd sees on. So that's August 5th, the earliest. Efforts to overturn the 2020 election, so the case we're talking about here, indicted August 1st, scheduled trial March 4th. So that is the soonest of any of the trials. So big question about how these appeals will affect that. On the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case, June 8th indictment, scheduled trial May 20th. And then Stormy Daniels, April 4th indictment, March 25th scheduled trial. So these are the prosecutions that he is facing.
And I know we're going to get into where things are politically, both in the primary, but also the polling in Michigan and that kind of thing right now, and some of which is concerning. But I think an important thing to keep in mind, and you and I have expressed our, I would say, concerns about Biden running again, and we can't control any of that. So what we can talk about is, right now, it certainly appears that our candidate is going to be the president, and we should talk about how I think these polls are going to change. And the reason I think that is because I think that right now, if you are a persuadable voter in this coming election, you're somebody who sometimes you vote for Democrats, sometimes you vote for Republicans, or maybe you're the people who usually vote Republican, but you voted for Biden in 2020. I think you're aware that Trump's in legal trouble. I don't think you're paying that much attention to it. I just don't. I think that if you're really into the primary on the Republican side, you know as much about it as you're willing to know. If you are willing to take in that information and consider it, you've already done that. And you've either said, well, I'm going to be for Haley, but I'll probably end up voting for Trump in the general or whatever. And then if you're people like us, if you're the people listening and watching this, you know all about it, but you're not persuadable. All right. So for the persuadable voters, I think that we should not underestimate, and I bet this is what the Biden camp is thinking, and I bet they've even got benchmark polling that shows this, that when you put these actual allegations and the actual fact that he will be in court during the part of the campaign season when these people are making up their minds, I think that it is likely to have a major effect on moving the polls in Biden's direction. I do still believe that.
I hope you're right.
Me too. I really do hope I'm right.
We are 5 days, by the way, to Iowa, and the final pre-caucus debate is tonight. The most recent polls are really interesting. So Trafalgar put out an Iowa caucus poll. It has Trump at 52, Haley at 18, DeSantis at 18, Ramaswamy 5, Christie 3. So Trump is above 50% in that poll. But interestingly, New Hampshire, CNN and the University of New Hampshire had a poll, most recent poll, that had Trump at 39, Haley 32, Christie 12, DeSantis 5, Ramaswamy 8. So Haley at least looks to be closing ground there. She's closing ground as she appears to be auditioning for the vice presidency. She has tacked significantly rightward in recent weeks. And Chris Christie was asked about why he doesn't drop out and endorse Haley. And he said, well, how would I look if I dropped out and endorsed Haley and she became the vice president under Trump? And honestly, I wasn't sympathetic. And then I heard that argument. I'm like, well, that's actually a pretty good argument because she doesn't seem very trustworthy.
And to defend Chris Christie, if I'm Chris Christie and my mission here is to get the Republican primary electorate to pay attention to what a danger Donald Trump is, and I look around at the other candidates, I don't see anybody else making that case. I see Nikki Haley expressing Susan Collins-esque concerns about Donald Trump and really arguing a lot and clearly disliking Vivek Ramaswamy. But I don't see Nikki Haley making the important points and actually putting the evidence in front of Republican voters that they don't want to hear. So I see Christie's point that it's important that he's there.
Well, let's talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. So he took to the internet this week to castigate his opponents who let the snow, Jason, stop them from campaigning. Let's go to this clip.
The other campaigns are canceling events today, not us. We have multiple events planned across Northwest Iowa. We're keeping them intact. If you can't handle the snow, you can't handle Xi Jinping. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's what he would say. So that was Monday. Around 6 a.m. Tuesday morning, Ramaswamy tweeted the following, quote, "It now appears effectively impossible to safely get from Des Moines to Coralville for our first event. We'll postpone our visit to Coralville and make sure we return there again before the caucus. We'll resume our schedule today as soon as it becomes possible to drive." Later that day, he got caught in a ditch and an Iowan had to pull him out of that ditch. It's going well over there. It's going well.
I'll tell you what, man.
Ramaswamy.
I conceptually understand that there are colder places in the winter than Iowa. I know that must be true. But I think as a fellow person who has campaigned in Iowa in a presidential, I think you would agree that it doesn't seem true.
Yeah, I remember I was in Wright County during the caucus in 2008, 2007, 2008. I was there for a few months in the dead of winter. And there's just not a lot of trees in the state of Iowa. I do love that state. And I think what happens is the wind just has nothing to stop it. So whatever the weather is, it just feels way colder. Every significant piece of cold weather attire I have, including my Gore-Tex boots, I bought way back then, and they've all held up. I actually bought for quality back then.
There's a spot in Des Moines, under those skywalks that they put in downtown, I think it is, where if you stand there long enough, you will freeze like you're in a 1960s cartoon. Like, I mean, it is, the place is cold, man. And,
I do love Iowa, but it is cold.
Yeah. Oh, I love Iowa too, et cetera, et cetera. We got to say that. But I mean, I live right by it, you know, but I love it. But I'm not, now that I'm not trying to be president, I ain't going out of my way to go there in January or February either. So it is funny to watch him flail because, you know, nobody really deserves it more. What a jerk.
Well, quickly, a poll came out. Politico reported on this. It is the Glenn Gariff Group, which is a Michigan-based group. And Donald Trump is trouncing Joe Biden in Michigan. This was January 2nd to January 6th. It has Trump up 47 to 39 among likely voters in the state. Is it time to get worried here?
Well, look, it's time to get worried because if we lose the election, we may not get to have another one. So even if this poll said that Biden was up by 10, I think it would be time to get worried. But yeah, no, like I'm pretty concerned about it. But again, what I keep coming back to is that it is one thing to talk about the prospect of a presidential candidate being convicted for really serious crimes during a presidential campaign. It is another thing for it to actually happen, right? And for people to actually hear some of this stuff. I mean, they're having to go down a road now where Donald Trump is going to have to say while campaigning for the presidency of the United States that once I'm president, I can order a hit on any one of you and it's okay. It might work, which is really frightening, but it also is not, it's not a political strategy you would choose if not out of necessity, if it weren't your legal argument.
Well, you know, the environment within the Republican Party has fundamentally changed. You have the retirements of people like Kinzinger, Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney, and then you have the so-called moderates like Nancy Mace, who we just heard from, who doesn't sound anything like she used to. Another one of those people who people used to tout as a moderate is Elise Stefanik from the northeast corner of New York State. She just doesn't sound too moderate. She went to meet the press, was asked about January 6th. Let's go to this clip.
You think that the people who stormed the Capitol should be held responsible to the full extent of the law?
I have concerns about the treatment of January 6 hostages. I have concerns. We have a role in Congress of oversight over our treatments of prisoners. And I believe that we're seeing the weaponization of the federal government against not just President Trump, but we're seeing it against conservatives. We're seeing it against Catholics. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to serve on the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Government, because the American people want answers. They want transparency, and they understand that as you look across this country, there seems to be two sets of rules. If your last name is Clinton or it's Biden, you get to live by a different set of rules than if you're an everyday patriotic American. I've been clear, Kristen, if you go back and play the full speech I gave on the House floor, I condemn the violence, just like I condemn the violence of the BLM riots, but I also importantly stood for election integrity and security of our elections, which if we don't have that, we do not have a democracy. So the real threat to our democracy is these baseless witch hunt investigations and lawsuits against President Trump, whether it's Tish James or whether we see in the DC Circuit Court. And that is undemocratic and it's shredding our Constitution. And you know who agrees with me, Kristen? The American people.
Okay, that lady is frightening because she's very good at that little pitter patter. She is very good at that. Yeah, she's a lot better at the rhythm than most of these tools. And that
Harvard educated Elise Stefanik, who she's the one who was in the Claudine Gay hearing, is the one who pushed them on the.
She's very good at her evilness, and at that she's one to watch. I think she's very scary. I think now I see why people talk about her as a likely choice for running mate for Trump. It makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, that is super awful. And now,
what you missed is that they showed her a clip of herself getting up in the House the day of January 6th, castigating the rioters. Well, so what's notable is now she's calling them hostages.
And that's what I mean about her pitter patter is that then she twists that into, look, I condemned the violence. And then she equates it with Black Lives Matter says they're the same. I condemn violence, but these people are hostages. It's that all I need is a very, very loose, thin thread between what I'm saying and something that might make sense. And then you forget where I started. It's very effective and frightening.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's more evidence of just how the party is, which wasn't in a great place a year or two ago, isn't even a worse place today. Well, one guy who I think we're not quite sure what his relationship is to the party, but he seems to really enjoy the spotlight. But he's being silenced, to be clear. But he's being silenced, yet seems to appear on the largest sports network in the world on a weekly basis. Is Aaron Rodgers. I want credit, by the way, for the fact that Leonard Floyd of the Buffalo Bills ended his season for everybody this week. I want everybody, whether the Bills win the Super Bowl or not. I think we deserve some credit for that. We don't normally like injuries around here.
Oh my gosh! You see your Bill's brain is. You're going his direction.
The best part of my brain. The best part of my brain. But okay, he and Kimmel, we talked about it last week, went back and forth this week. This is kind of a super cut from, I think it's either Inside Edition or one of those news shows. Let's go to this clip.
Aaron Rodgers is firing back at Jimmy Kimmel today.
I don't give what he says about me.
Blasting him after the late night host slammed the quarterback in a 7-minute monologue last night.
Aaron Rodgers has the right to express any opinion he wants to, but saying someone is a pedophile is not an opinion.
Kimmel was left fuming after Rodgers appeared to suggest last week that Kimmel might be on a list of associates of convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
This has something to do with the Epstein list that came out?
Feels like it's supposed to be coming out soon. A lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't.
Either he actually believes my name was going to be on Epstein's list, which is insane, or the more likely scenario is he doesn't actually believe that. He just said it because he's mad at me for making fun of his top knot and his lies about being vaccinated.
Kimmel challenged the Super Bowl champion to apologize.
When I do get something wrong, which happens on rare occasions, you know what I do? I apologize for it, which is what Aaron Rodgers should do, which is what a decent person would do, but I bet he won't. If he does, you know what I'll do? I'll accept his apology and move on.
But there was no apology today. Rodgers, speaking out on ESPN's Pat McAfee show, was defiant. He says he never suggested Kimmel was a pedophile.
I said a lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't come out. End quote. I totally understand how serious an allegation of pedophilia would be. So for him to be upset about that, I get it. I'm not stupid enough to accuse you of that with absolutely zero evidence.
He says he wants this to be the final word on the feud.
As long as he understands what I actually said and that I'm not accusing him of being on a list, and I'm all for moving forward.
What a weak dude that he can't apologize. And to claim that he was not saying that, he was quite clearly implying that.
Yes. He's a coward, really. And totally. I think and he did this with his own teammates, if you remember, with the vaccination. He says I was immunized during the whole COVID thing. And it turns out he didn't have the vaccination. And he was like, well, I meant, immunized means, and then he came up with this convoluted definition, which makes no sense.
He's such a politician, actually.
Yeah, he claims he's the straight talk guy, and he's a liar. He claims he's being silenced, yet he's platformed on the largest network in television, and he obviously enjoys the attention. He loves the limelight, and I'm sick of him. Maybe we made a mistake in injuring him that first week, because maybe if he was actually focused on football games in the playoffs, we wouldn't have to hear from him on this kind of stuff.
Well, here's my favorite thing that he said this week, which is when he was asked, what do the Jets need to do to be able to win next year?
Oh, yes.
and he said, we got to cut out any bullshit. And we have to, we got to get rid of any distractions, anything that doesn't have to do exclusively with winning. We got to get rid of that. And then he went on the Pat McAfee show and talked shit about Jimmy Kimmel. It's like that's not leadership. It's cowardice. And the reason that I wanted us to talk about this is because it is important that people who listen to and watch this show, be able to spot the other places that extremism can creep into the minds of your friends and family. Because when people watch Pat McAfee's show, they do not think that they are taking in political content or propaganda. They do not think that they are doing anything to form their own opinions about politics. In fact, they think, understandably, that they are escaping from real news and from politics. So then when somebody like Aaron Rodgers comes on and says all the conspiratorial stuff that he likes to go on there and say, including stuff like this, it gets past the potential guards at the door of your mind. And it's the same thing that, Rogan does, and that these shows that seem like mainstream bro culture, but are actually pushing a very extreme agenda in a subtle way. And I'm not saying McAfee's doing it, but by letting Rodgers continue to come on, he's an accomplice to it. He's enabling it. That's really dangerous. And we've got to be on the lookout for that in our friends and relatives, and in ourselves, frankly.
I'm dumbfounded, because McAfee is somebody who I started to really enjoy watching, and it's this place, like, you want to watch sports, you don't want to talk about this stuff. It's like you turn it on and you're like, let's make fun of, like, the Bills for blowing another game, and talk about, he does the whole shtick with the Alabama fans and the Georgia fans and all this. It's like, why he even felt it was in his interest to have this guy continue to come on. And this is not the first time Rodgers did stupid stuff on the show. It's like, for McAfee, it's like, to the extent he cares about people like us, right? Like, maybe he's just going for a certain demographic. But even with all the previous mistakes, I was starting to think, you know what? Maybe McAfee's thing is he doesn't have strong opinions on these things, and he's just a non-judgmental forum. People can come on. They don't have to have a certain kind of politics. If they say like borderline stuff, he'll kind of shrug it off. Like, there was different moments where he kind of he gently jabbed Rodgers for different things. But I think throughout this, he's really raised a lot of questions. And especially some of the people on his show have explicitly endorsed, like some of his co-hosts have explicitly endorsed these ideas. And that's dangerous for him.
I want to be clear. I'm not saying, like a lot of the right has said in the past, I don't think you're saying this either, that athletes and that sports commentators, that they should just stick to sports and stay out of politics. I'm not saying that. If you want to talk about politics, go ahead. Like, if you want to use your platform to advance what you're doing. But I do believe it is irresponsible to do that, even if you're doing it unwittingly, and then hide behind the idea that this is just a sports show, that nothing here is political. That's really problematic. And so, okay, we have a breaking news that Salty's putting on us. Yeah, well, I think clearly he's watching live, because now it's breaking that Aaron Rodgers will not appear on Pat McAfee's show anymore this season.
There you go.
And then it's a quote from McAfee saying there will be a lot of people that will be happy with that, myself included. I think that's a step in the right direction. It may also just be, it's the same parent company that.
Well, that's a pointed sentence. Myself included.
Yeah, I read that to be, I'd have to see it, but I read it to be, this has been a real headache. I don't want to deal with all this anymore.
Well, good for him. He says, okay, I'll read this now. Aaron Rodgers' Tuesday season 4 is done. There will be a lot of people that will be happy with that, myself included, to be honest. With the way it ended, it got real loud. I'm happy that is not going to be my mentions going forward, which is great news. Good for you, Pat McAfee.
I think that's awesome.
That's the way to handle it. And look, I think this will now lead to the inevitable accusations of silencing. Yeah. Look, Rodgers has plenty of places to go. And look, I'm not saying they should have canceled the Pat McAfee show if he kept Rodgers on. I'm just saying I personally don't like to listen to him. So it's my prerogative not to listen to him. And on your point about athletes and all that, my bar is really high. Everybody could say whatever they want. But even when it comes to people who I agree with politically, like a good example is all these NBA people who speaking out about one thing or after another. But then when China gets mentioned, they get really silent. Even people like Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, and stuff like that, who suddenly lose their tongue when it comes to Hong Kong stuff, like what happened with Daryl Morey. By and large, a lot of these people are full of it. So like the very few who are not, I love those people, So when Daryl Morey went after, he didn't even go after, he said justice for Hong Kong or something like that and had to apologize for it. This kind of stuff, it's like a lot of these people they're not exactly, we're not dealing with like Noah Yuval Harari or Ian Bremmer, it's like these are people who these are not exactly people with the knowledge and the standing to say that many interesting things. So I'm even in the camp of like, I'm not like the shut up and dribble type. I'm just like, it takes a rare person who's caught up in these systems to me that is interesting on these issues, because so many of them are so muzzled by their financial relationships.
If you want to see the perfect example of how to do it, it's Bill Walton. You go back and you look at the example of Bill Walton. That's the guy people can look
Bill
at.
Russell too. Yeah. Bill Russell who went down to Mississippi, you know, Bill Russell, who defied a lot of the NBA leaders, and even being in the NBA was a miracle for him at that time, and went down to Mississippi at a time when it was very dangerous to be down there, and fought for racial justice. Like that's real courage there. But okay, we had a voicemail, Jason. You wanna tee this one up from our listener that's related to the Rogers stuff?
Yeah. So this is. Are you talking? This is actually the This is the email. The Democracy versus Democratic Republic.
Yeah, I think this was in response because Rogers said
yes,
the Republic thing. Yeah,
you're right. You're right. Okay. So, so Adam Hutchinson wrote to us, and he said, "I just finished listening to this week's episode where you and Ravi talk about Biden's message of working to preserve democracy and its importance. One thing I've seen in local social media posts and heard people mention in my very red corner of upstate New York is that, quote, America is a republic, not a social democracy, or, quote, a constitutional republic like America isn't the same as a democracy. While I know what these points are getting at, a rationale for anti-majoritarian governing, I'm not sure how to counter that, quote, point, other than to say a republic is just a type of representative democracy and that they're splitting hairs. So yeah, he says, any insight from you or Ravi would be appreciated. And this is a good one because I keep seeing this on social media too. And I bet our listeners are, you know, having this spouted at them that anytime somebody says, I'm worried about democracy, I'm worried that Trump is an enemy of democracy, they say, this isn't a democracy, it's a democratic republic, which is really just like I think, frankly, just like an annoying, like correcting your grammar. But I think it does need to be responded to. I've written some notes on it. I'll go ahead and go first.
Yeah.
And my thought is that the most important thing to know about a democratic republic is that the point of it is to protect the rights of minorities from the mob, right? That's why it's a democratic republic, so that you can't have just a general majority vote that says we vote these people off the island. But when we talk about a threat to democracy, we're talking about a part of America that is democracy, which is the part where we get to choose who we vote for. And when one person gets more votes than the other person, that's democracy. That's supposed to be the result of that in America is supposed to be that person wins the election. Or if it's a referendum, for instance, that issue, it goes in the direction of the majority of voters. It's just not allowed to go against the rights of a minority. Meaning if somebody gets more votes than the other person, they get to take office. That's democracy. The Democratic Republic part is that they don't get to take office and then say, and now next time the people who voted against me aren't allowed to vote, because the point of a democratic republic is to protect the rights of the minority. Now, for us liberals, the inconvenient part of that is that the way the Supreme Court currently reads, say, the Second Amendment, which we disagree with, but the way they currently read it means that is considered a minority right. And that no matter how many times we would vote for something that the Supreme Court says violates the Constitution, you wouldn't be able to enact that law. But it doesn't mean that we're not a democracy and that democracy is not under threat.
Yeah, I agree with you on the sort of nitpicking part of it, right? It's often meant, sometimes it's people, I get people in my mentions, and I try to be careful in getting the language right, which is that we're a representative democracy or a constitutional republic or whatever. But people still nitpick because they're assholes. But I also think that what they're guarding against is the fact that the Republican Party hasn't won a majority in most elections that they even assume the presidency, and have governed in no way with that in mind. Like, so they're not like, they don't govern with the humility that they're governing with a minority of the American public. And so they want to create an intellectual underpinning for that. Period. That's it. And now they want to go even further because republic can mean a lot of different things. So they now want to go even further and say, well, you know, if the electors change their minds and yada, 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 well, that's still fine because we're a republic. We're not a democracy. And the ballot box is not the only way to choose a representative. That's what I'm picking up on now.
And Go ahead.
Well, what does Rodgers care about? What I'm interested in is when Aaron Rodgers gets on Pat McAfee and with his 10 minutes decides to mention that we're a republic, not a democracy. What is Aaron Rodgers getting at with that? Is my question. You know,
dude, I think you nailed it. Aaron Rodgers got hurt, and then Aaron Rodgers, all he had to do, he did his rehab during the day, but he's clearly not a team-oriented enough guy that he was in the meetings to try and help. What's the backup? Zach Wilson. He wasn't going to go in there and try and read defenses and try and be, a quarterback's coach. He wasn't going to do that. What he was going to do was he was going to get on Reddit and he was going to listen to Rogan all day. And he was, that's what I think happened. But I think there's a lesson in that, because there are a lot of particularly white men who have a lot of extra time and their lives aren't going the way they want. And I think you could be a many times millionaire and a famous athlete and still fall for that stuff. And so nobody is immune,
And what he said was interesting. It's worth mentioning because this is a talking point, which he says we have this emphasis on equality today, but America, the Constitution is about freedom, not equality. That's what Aaron Rodgers said, something the equivalent of that when he was mentioning this Republic comment. Now, it doesn't take a constitutional scholar to read the Reconstruction Amendments, which are all about equality, right? The equal protection of the laws, for example. And freedom and equality often have to coincide. For example,
they're not mutually exclusive.
Yes. So the freedom from slavery was also about equality, right? And I'm not sure exactly what he was trying to get at, but the question around equality, what you hear from Republicans is, well, it's about Democrats want equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. And I'm like, well, let's have that debate. Because I do think there's some people on the left who probably err more on the outcome than opportunity side. Certainly this is a big debate on education circles, but at least try, Aaron Rodgers, to make a point about it. Why do I have to squint to try to get at what you're trying to say? Like, if you really want to get on Pat McAfee as if it's like Charlie Rose or something and make a point about this, really do the work and make your point. Because you do your own research, I guess. So do it. Show us what the research that you've done.
Put on your lab coat that you
put on your lab coat. Mix, get those beakers out. Let's go.
That's right. All right. Well, in one for us, let's stick to football, I think. So here's the thing: that 2 years ago, you traveled here to Kansas City when the Bills came here in the playoffs and endured. We won't have to go back through it. Endured what was great for me and bad for you. If the Chiefs beat the Dolphins, which we don't know if they're going to do this Saturday, and if the Bills, who you have the Steelers?
Yes.
Yeah, you're almost certainly.
Well, we can lose to anybody. We're very.
I know. I'm messing with you. Then I just have to. I don't think I can get out there because we'll have to go to Buffalo. I don't think I can, but I have to look because it just occurred to me just now that if that scenario happens, I have to at least look at whether that's a trip I can make, because I feel like that. And I think you're going to beat us. So I feel like I owe you one. So I don't know if I can. I have to look at, kids' schedule.
I was going to ask you, but I know that things are harder for you. And also Buffalo is harder to get to than Kansas City. I mean, but
I assume you're going to go to one of these.
Yeah, that would be the one I would go to. I'm talking to Hodari about going this weekend, but I have to change my flight back to do it. So I haven't decided yet. I'd love to go to Buffalo, and it's I don't live. You live in Kansas City. I don't live in Buffalo, but it's not that hard to get to from New York City. You just take a 45-minute flight.
It'd be fun if I can do it. I got to look. I haven't even looked at my calendar, but it would be fun to do. And let's be honest, in all likelihood, I'd be going to take my licking on it because your team looks so good right now, and I just don't see
we're
us.
A hot mess in a way that I think is really endearing. Everybody I listen to who comments on it is like, man, these Bills. It's like I actually enjoy the fact that we are so entertaining to everybody in the sense that you just never know what you're going to get from Josh Allen. Is it going to be an interception? Is it going to be this heroic, crazy pass? And I'm at peace with it. I had no expectations. We had a 0.1 or 0.2% chance of winning the second seed when we were 6-6, and we somehow won it. So at this point,
11-6,
it's all gravy from here. I'm just happy to still have a team to watch on TV.
I will say, I hope that somehow the downtrodden, somewhat downtrodden Chiefs figure this out and win the Super Bowl again. But if they don't, I really do hope that the Bills win.
Yeah, it's a fun year. So. I mean, it's been excruciating, but yeah, it's been very interesting. Well, okay, I think that's it.
Yeah, I guess I should close it out here. Okay. Please leave a 5-star review. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, that kind of thing. Thank you to the Meidas Mighty. You can find us on social media at Jason Kander and at Ravi M. Gupta. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.